Bruce Shelton is a friend of mine. We had lunch together at the Silver Diner in Virginia Beach near what is now Town Center about 12 years ago. And if you don't know Bruce, you're missing a good friendship. And he's prepared a message for us today, and I'd like to welcome Bruce forward.
Feelings are mutual. This is a good man to have as a friend, too. All right. I always, when I give my talks, I always like to start just with a few moments of silence, in which I'll ask you to please help me to get aside my ego out of the way, so I can to give a message to you that's from God that you need to hear today, that will be helpful to you in your journey. So if we could just please be silent just for a few moments. Thank you, dearest Lord. Amen. All right. It's a pleasure to have this opportunity to talk to you today about the book of Revelation. This is that book at the end of the Bible that's filled with stories of women standing on moons and holy cities and dragons, and it's that book filled with imagery and presented kind of like a dream. And when I start reading the book of Revelation, it gets to be very challenging because of all the imagery in it. And so we're going to take a look at what that imagery might mean, and then it becomes extremely helpful to us. I'd like to just give you a little setup to this as to why I gave this talk today. Decided to give this talk today. 2 months ago, I had the opportunity to go to Greece. The channel's still clearing up here. Went to Greece and on a solo pilgrimage, and the first place I went to was this beautiful place called Mount Athos. Mount Athos was featured in 60 Minutes a few years ago, and ever since I saw that, I said, I got to go to this place. This is a 137 square mile piece of property in northeastern Greece, located on this peninsula with all forest and oceans on both sides, and kind of an idyllic place. And this piece of property was given by the emperor about 1,000 years ago to the Byzantine church. And since that time, it's been a place of prayer. So they have like about 20 monasteries there, over 1,000 monks. It's a very, very powerful place to go because all of these 1,000 male monks have given their lives basically and for one purpose, and that is the pursuit of God. And so they pray 8 hours a day. I stayed in 3 different monasteries. You kind of hike on mountain trails from one monastery to the other. It's like living there. It's the same way it's been in the 13th century. It's like the way it is today. But you get up at 4 in the morning and you start your prayers, and at 8 o'clock you do a yawn, and then you have your breakfast. And they're real big on prayer and meditation, but they're not big on breakfast. You have 10 minutes for your meal. They have a little pitcher of wine there, if you care to drink wine with your vegetarian meal. And but it was quite an experience, and it's just the energy of all these people for now 1,000 years praying to God. So that was my first part of my adventure, and that was kind of a setup to where I went to next. I took a plane down to the island of Samos, and then I took a ferry to the island of Patmos. And Patmos, as you may know, is the island that John the Apostle was banished to by the Roman authorities. The story goes that he and Peter were both arrested by the Romans and charged with subversive activities, meaning they were teaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. And Peter was sentenced to be crucified, to die by crucifixion. And John was banished to the island of Patmos, which is a prison island at that time. A very kind of a hard place to live. So John, of course, is an enlightened being. He was apostle. He'd written the book of John and the three books of John, books 1, 2, and 3 as well. And he was a very enlightened being. So of course he's spending a lot of time in prayer and meditation. And he found this cave. And that's where historically, a lot of Christian monks and mystics will spend a great deal of time in caves. And he might have been the one who started this tradition, but he found this wonderful little cave. And while he was there, he had a visit from this angel that said, he says, "I'm from Jesus. Jesus has given me a message that Jesus in turn received from God." And the way it reads was the revelation, this is Revelation 1, "The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him, to show unto us his servants things which must shortly come to pass. And he sent and signified it by his angel unto his servant John, who bear record of the word of God and of the testimony of Jesus Christ and of all things that he saw." So once again, this is Jesus has a message he wants to give to us. And Jesus says, "I got this from the Holy Father, from God himself." And he sends an angel. And then, so John's there. Basically, John is he's writing a transcript. He's told to write down everything he sees and hears. And this is what he came up with, was this book that we now call the Book of Revelation. Now, when you start reading it, as I have done, it's it can actually be very frustrating until you understand the terminology. And no less a soul than the great Thomas Jefferson, who really was a sincere seeker after truth, he really tried to understand the book of Revelation. And finally, he threw his hands up in the air and said, "This book is the delusions of a madman," quote unquote. Because Thomas Jefferson was trying to understand this book using the rational mind. He was the high priest of the Enlightenment period, which was a period of the rational mind. He couldn't get it. And he finally got frustrated, but I can understand why, because it was frustrating to me until I started understanding what all these symbols meant. Now, fortunately, since the time of Thomas Jefferson, we've had some wonderful spiritual teachers who have come along to give us keys to understand what this book is all about. The three that have helped me the most are Edgar Casey, Paul Solomon, and a fellow that some of you may not have heard about. I talk about him every now and then, Emmett Fox. Emmett Fox has been an extremely important person, spiritual teacher to me in my life. He lived he did his most important work up in New York City back in the 30s and 40s. His life correlated that of Edgar Casey. They both knew of each other. They didn't know each other personally, but they knew of each other. Anyway, he's a very special person to me, and I'm going to lean a lot on his particular interpretation of this book that we're going to take a look at. We can't look at the entire book, but we're going to look specifically at chapter 13. Okay? That was what the reading was this morning that Sarah shared with us. So, now according to Edgar Casey, the visions, the experiences, the names, their churches, the places, dragons, the cities, all are but emblems of those forces that may war within the individual in its journey into the material manifestation, to the awakening of the spirit. So this is all about a battle, a struggle going on within ourselves, okay, according to Edgar Casey. Casey says that chapters 1 through 11 describe the process one must go through to purify, sanctify, and glorify one's body, okay, physical body, while chapters 12 through 20 describe the process necessary to spiritualize one's mind. Okay? In the readings on the book of Revelation, Casey shows how applying these concepts and practices can help people overcome weaknesses, develop virtues, and ultimately achieve full consciousness of God's abiding presence. Now, Edgar Casey did a series of readings on the book of Revelation, chapter by chapter. He gave a detailed explanation. There's a wonderful recent book by John Van Alken that really is a masterpiece. And John Van Alken is one of the great teachers of Edgar Casey's readings. But he studies the readings and really put them all together and gave a wonderful interpretation of, basically gave an interpretation of Edgar Casey's interpretation of the book of Revelation. If you've ever read the Casey readings, you know that sometimes they can get a little complicated. But anyway, John made that. So I recommend that book to anyone who really wants to learn more about the book of Revelation. All right, that brings us to chapter 12, okay? And the first verse here has this beautiful symbology. There appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. Now this is, I want you just for a second to visualize this. This is a woman standing on the moon, clothed in the sun, wearing a crown of 12 stars. You got that picture in your mind? What is the woman? Well, the woman represents the human soul. It represents you and I. Okay, it represents our soul. This is who we are. This is the woman. She's clothed with the sun. Now, clothed with the sun is the way that God sees us. This is the way that we actually are. Because we have lost our connection with God, because we get so caught up in our mind, right? We lose connection with the center of our being. We don't see ourselves as we really are. But we will see ourselves, and we'll see everyone else as being like this when we finally awaken fully to who we are. So this is the imagery of it, clothed with the sun. She's standing on the moon, it says, and the moon under her feet. Now, in symbology, in ancient symbology, anytime someone is standing on something, it represents victory. It represents conquest. Think of the Virginia State emblem with the woman standing on tyranny. It represents conquest, and this woman's standing on the moon. But what does the moon symbolize? The moon symbolizes the subconscious mind, your subconscious mind. Okay. Now she's standing on the moon, meaning she has, this woman, you and I have conquered our subconscious mind. We're in control of it. Now this is huge. Okay, this is huge because the suffering we experience in life is caused primarily by our lack of ability of all the thoughts and feelings that we're constantly going through our mind every day. Okay? We're told by modern research that the average human being has around 60,000 thoughts a day that go through our mind. Endless thoughts. Now, even if these scientific researches, and they're from this is credible research from people at University of California. Even if they got it totally wrong and we only have half that many thoughts, that's a lot of thoughts that go through our mind every day. Okay? Think of when you got up this morning. Do you notice when I get up, before I get out of bed, I usually stay in bed a few minutes, I notice thoughts immediately start going across my mind. It's the way it works. Now, all these thoughts that go across our mind, they fall into two categories. They're either thoughts of the past, okay, memories, we call them memories, or they're thoughts of the future, okay, thoughts of some future event. Every thought, just about all these thoughts are about the past or the future. Now, this is the real problem because we get so captivated with these thoughts that we live literally in our mind in the past and in the future. Now, the problem with this is that the only moment that really counts is the present moment, okay? It's only the present moment that you and I are actually alive. All right? It's only in the present moment when we're breathing, our hearts are beating, we're feeling anything. Right now, this moment, right now, you're feeling all these feelings right now, okay? And so when we're lost in our mind, and this is what happens to us all day long, we're thinking about things in the past, thinking about things in the future. We're being taken away from the present moment, which is the only moment in which we can connect with our center, okay? It's the only moment that we can connect with God, and then we can really realize the fullness of who we are. Is everybody following me so far? Yeah. So this is a big problem, see? And it's because we're not in control of our mind, you see? The interesting thing when you look at this is that if you look at all thoughts in the past doesn't really exist anymore. It's no more than a thought form in our mind. That's all the past is. Whether it was 10 minutes ago, whether it was 10 years ago, whether it was 10 lifetimes ago, it's nothing but a memory. It doesn't exist. It's water under the bridge. It only exists as a thought form in our mind when? Right now. Likewise, in the future does not exist, okay? The future is simply another thought form in our mind. It's a figment of our imagination. You know, of course we have to plan for the future. Of course we want to have a good memory to remember certain things that have happened to us in the past. When we use mathematics, we're drawing upon our memory, right? So I'm not saying we should never think about the past or the future. Of course we need to. That's what our mind is supposed to do. The problem is we can't seem to control our mind. According to Eckhart Tolle, 80 to 90% of these thoughts that go across our mind really serve no useful purpose. Okay, all these thoughts do is actually rob us of the one thing that really counts as the present, which is peace of mind. Okay, so the problem is we're kind of lost and trapped in our mind. This woman is standing on the moon. She finally has reached the point at which she is in control of her thoughts. That's why I said this is huge. This huge meaning to the symbology of this. She has wearing a crown of 12 stars. The 12 stars represent the 12 signs of the zodiac. Okay? The idea here is that you and I have certain lessons to learn. 12 lessons to learn here in University Earth. Okay? We have 12 lessons. Each one of the signs represents a different part of ourselves that we have to conquer, that we have to overcome. It's like going to a college and taking 12 classes, and this is math class, this is arithmetic, this is English class, this is German class. So we have these 12 lessons that we all have to learn, and that's what the 12 signs of the zodiac represent. And this woman's wearing a crown with 12 stars, meaning she has finally mastered all of the lessons, okay? This woman, once again, represents who? It represents you. It represents me. This is our destiny, you see, to eventually wear this crown. This woman has finally made it. And she being with child cried, travailing in birth and pain to be delivered. So this woman is pregnant. She's about ready to give birth to a baby. She is in pain, as any woman is who's about to give birth to a baby. Now the lesson here is that all of us on the verge, you see, of being reborn, of giving birth to our true self. Okay? All of us are. But it could be that some of the pain that we experience in our daily living in this lifetime could be part of that birthing process. There's an old saying that the darkest part of the night is right before the dawn. Okay? So it could be that this is part of the process. In other words, any pain you're experiencing for any reason has to do with the process of giving birth to a total awakening of who you are. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Now, no drama is complete without a villain, right? So the villain has now appeared. This is a red dragon with 10 horns and 7 heads. Now, in ancient occult symbology, the horns represent power. So we're told that this dragon has immense power, 10 horns. The dragon has 7 heads, meaning it's hydra-headed. So we're fighting with this dragon, and the dragon is, you deal with this face, and then another face appears. This dragon represents, it's a red dragon, it represents emotions. It represents basically the dark, we can say the dark side of ourselves. It represents our deepest fears, okay? We all have this everybody in this room, everybody on the planet has got this side to themselves, where we have all these fears. It's where all these fears live of things that are happening to us here on planet Earth. And this dragon now is there ready to devour the child. This story, if you haven't picked it up yet, is very similar to, it's actually just a retelling. It's not similar. It's a retelling of the nativity of Jesus. This woman represents Mary. In that nativity story, you have Mary, and you have her giving birth to Jesus. You have Herod there, who's representing the dragon ready to devour the child. So this is simply a retelling, you see, of using symbology of the story of the birth of Jesus. This child, of course, is in using Christian terminology, is the Christ child that this woman is giving birth to, and this dragon knows. That is to say, the dark side of ourself knows that if the Christ child is born, that's the end of the dragon. So it wants to put it out of business right in the very beginning. Put this child out of business right in the very beginning before it grows up. And this is where divine intervention enters into this story. This is where God enters into this story. When we are close to God, when we pray and meditate every day, you see, it's not just our egoic mind trying to deal with this dragon, deal with our fears. It's God working through us. And the dragon has really no power when we're filled with the Spirit of God. And so the story goes on that, and she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto God into his throne. So this child is protected, you see. But the child is protected only because the woman is reached the point where she's wearing the crown of 12 stars, and she's standing on the moon, where she's conquered all these thoughts and feelings that normally the dragon feeds on. Is everybody with me so far? Kind of throwing out a lot here, a lot of symbology. And so the child is brought with beautiful symbology here, who was to rule all nations with a rod of iron, and her child was caught up unto God and to his throne. Then the woman is protected as well. The woman fled into the wilderness, where she hath a place prepared of God, that they should feed her there 1,260 days. So the woman is you or I. Now we've given birth to the child. The child, though, has to grow up. This is an infant, right? So the child's not quite ready to take over. Don't forget, this is chapter 12 of Revelation. There's still 10 more chapters to go before the child grows up and we experience the full awakening, which is what Revelation is all about. So at this point, though, the woman is protected. Just as in the story of Jesus, Mary and Joseph received a dream. Joseph received a dream. It says, flee to Egypt. And they went to Egypt, and Jesus was protected. And by the time Herod sent his troops out to slaughter all the kids, Jesus was protected. It's just a retelling of the same story. This storytelling in the form of symbology. So the woman is protected. She's taken to a place in the wilderness where it's a refuge, and she's completely safe. Now, this is where I think is beautiful symbology here. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought against his angels. And prevailed not. The dragon prevailed not. Neither was their place found for them any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Now, this is powerful symbology, isn't it? We've got the army of Michael here with his angels, and the army of Satan here with his army of... And it's interesting, it doesn't say army of devils, does it? It says army of angels. And they have this war in heaven. Now, God, the angel Michael, of course, is an angel of God. He's pure light. Darkness has no power in the presence of pure light. Okay, and using the symbology of light and darkness, darkness is simply the absence of light. Okay, it has no substance in itself. Light is not the absence of darkness. Darkness is the absence of light. So in the presence of pure light, which is what happens when we let God into our lives and God fills us and surrounds us, when this happens, the dark side to ourself, this red dragon, has no power, and it's cast out of heaven. Right? Does everybody get that? So that's the whole teaching here. The beautiful teaching. It says, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And I love this word, the deceiver. You see, that's how the dragon has all of its power. See, the dragon is no more than a creation of our own minds. Okay? Once again, the dragon represents all of our fears. Our own mind creates all these beliefs that we have things to be afraid of. We're afraid of money. I don't have enough money. What am I going to do? I just don't have enough money to pay my rent. When we are afraid of anything in life, you see, what are we doing? We essentially have made a god out of that thing, right? That situation, that person. that we've given power to. That's the definition of God. That's God with a little g, all right? When we're afraid of perhaps of maybe growing older, a lot of the people in this room are older, and we think about what's going to happen. I do this. I think, go to visit somebody in a nursing home, and I think that can be me someday. Fear enters into it, right? Now, when I do that, what I've done is I've made a God out of the calendar. Every time I'm afraid, I have thoughts in my mind. These thoughts come, and my mind wants to grab them and start obsessing about them, right? Every time I do that, that's the equivalent of me falling before my altar and worshiping this symbol on my altar called the calendar. I'm worshiping the calendar. But the more I worship the calendar, the more power I give to the calendar. Okay? The more power I give to my fears of growing older. The more I empower the red dragon. Okay? And anytime we give power to anything other than the one God, okay, the one God, what are we doing? We're violating the first of the 10 Commandments, which says, "Thou shalt have no other gods before thee." Okay? So that first commandment says it all. There's actually only one power, you see. That's why when God is present and He's represented by the angel Michael, the dragon just disappears into its native nothingness. As a matter of fact, the dragon's energy is just transformed. It's interesting. It doesn't say the dragon is killed. It doesn't say he slayed the dragon. The dragon's energy eventually is just transformed, okay, and from dark energy to light, which is what happens if you have a dark room and you turn the switch on, the darkness disappears and the room's filled with light. So, I don't know about you, but I kind of feel like all this story and this imagery is so cool and so neat. I'm going to end my talk here by reading to you the first 4 verses of Revelation 21. This is getting near the end of this. Is Revelation 21 and 22. I love the imagery here. This is after the journey has been completed and the dragon has finally been completely contained, okay, and transformed into light. And John is saying, "And I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men. And He will dwell with them, and they shall be His people, and God Himself shall be with them and be their God. And God shall wipe away all tears," I love this, "from their eyes. And there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away." And so that's what it's all about. That's why you and I are here. You know, we're going through this journey. We call it living a life. Every day, everything that happens to us is perfectly designed, okay, to bring us home to God. The plan is so perfect that there's not even a possibility that there can be an imperfection in the plan. You know, there's an old saying that if you look at a Persian rug and look underneath it, you see all these strands all over the place. You flip it, you see the front of the Persian rug, and you see this beautiful design. Well, that's our life. That's your life. When your life seems to be going all over the place, and you're thinking, "How could this happen? How could this be?" It's because we're not seeing the big picture. We're seeing it just from our limited perspective, you see. And the truth is, all of us are on a journey to awaken as souls. It's just going to happen, okay? And we can do it we don't have to wait 10 more lifetimes or 100 more lifetimes. It can happen right now. It does happen right now. See, God is right now with us. It happens right now if we simply practice prayer and meditation every day. That's how we open the door. That's how we connect with our center. Okay, everything in spiritual life goes back to that simple teaching. We have to spend time with God. If we spend time in prayer and meditation every day, we keep the channel open. And every day, when we do that, the 12 stars are shining and we're standing on the moon. Thank you very much.